Thank you so much. And I just want to take the time first off just to thank Heather and her team for inviting me here. This is my passion. I love to educate people on such an important topic. Just to get the slides going. Do we have that there? Can you guys all see
Yes, we
that?
do. We are good.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. So you know what? Before we get started, welcome you all. I know there's so many other places you guys can be this afternoon, but instead you are here to talk about this topic. So I promise won't be too heavy. I'm looking forward to hearing all the questions after. So please remember to write down your questions and we'll get through to them at the end. All right. Um, let's see. I don't even think I can see show of hands. So just, in the comment box, please let me know how many of you could not sleep last night because you were so excited to join this workshop today. Let's see the comments. Anybody who wants to be like, yes, couldn't sleep last night. I kept on waking up. All right. Well, let's get started here. Let's see how easy it's going to be for me to transition to the next slide. All right, so let's talk just a little bit about myself. So you guys know my name. I'm Andrea Cox. I was actually born and raised here in Calgary. My parents are both from the Caribbean. They're from Jamaica, so I tell people that I'm Jamaican. I have a twin brother, I have an older sister. I'm blessed to be a super auntie. I have two nieces, I have two nephews. And one of the things I love to do, guys, is I love to laugh. If there's anything I like to do, it's I love to laugh. And I think now, even with the transitions we're going with my aging parents, there's a lot of humor with it simply because it's a part of life. And we either have a choice of laughing or crying, or you know what I mean? So we just choose to laugh and just laugh about little things that seem to be kind of simple before and not so simple now as we're like maturing. And it's just part of our selves to just more make the best of what the situations are in life and just adding that humor in it. So that is what, let's see, it was because you were busy. I just saw the comment. It's because you couldn't wait to join. That's why you're up from 3 o'clock this morning. Okay. So yeah, so my background actually is in staffing and recruitment. I did that for years. And then I transitioned into working with a unionized company where I was explaining permanent benefits with people in regards to funeral policies, things like that. And while I was actually doing that, first of all, if anybody told me, you guys, years ago that this is what I would be doing now, I would have laughed at them because I am one of the biggest, I don't want to say the biggest chicken, but when it comes to this topic, it's as you guys, depending on where you're from, it's taboo. People don't want to talk about it. We have our fears. My mom she's had all kinds of fears. Growing up, she had all kinds of stories to tell us. And a funny joke that I just have to add, because this literally just happened on Monday, you guys. I do pick up shifts at one of the funeral homes. And from time to time, I'll drive the coach, which is the hearse, or I'll drive the limo like with the family, and I'll do the different things like that. And on Monday, I was driving the coach, and for some odd reason, I guess we didn't put the lockdown to keep the casket in place, right? And as long as I braked, you guys, casket moved, and I was like, oh my goodness, I was so scared, you guys. And thankfully, my colleague was with me because in most cases, I'm driving the coach by myself. And I told her that if you were not with me, explain to me what happened, I would have stopped the car, I would have parked it, and I would have left, right? And I would have called the funeral home like, you guys got to pick up this coach because anyways, I had a good laugh. We all had a good laugh because I was like, oh my goodness, I do this work. I love it. But there's certain things that I still have this fear on me, right? But anyhow, let's kind of move on. So let's do some stats. Let's do some stats. So 2/3 of funerals are planned and it's actually paid for by women. Why do we think that? I know the answer is there. Um, and you guys probably read it already, so I'm just going to say it. It's usually because in most times the wives outlive the husband, right? Or if we have adult children who are caregivers for us, in most cases, it's going to be the daughter who's going to do it rather than the son, right? Or if it is even if it's a situation where, say, a son lost their parents, then lots of times it's their wife who steps in and helps, right? So that's how that typically works. And they do say that in 60% of Canadians do not have a will. And the stats on that, the last time that we checked, they say that 69% of those between the ages of 35 and 44 do not have wills, right? 49% of those between the ages of 45 and 54 do not have wills. And then 34% of those between the ages of 55 and 64 do not have wills. And we were not able to get above that. But typically we're seeing that usually after that age, the numbers are lower even more, right? So that is the stats at that moment. So for those of you who don't know who I am, I have, after years of working in the end of life, I wrote a book about 2 years ago called Final Departure. We've actually recently changed the subtitle, which is now Embracing Your Farewell, a Guide to Leaving a Lasting Legacy. And we'll talk more about the book, but this is pretty much what this workshop is going to be about, okay? There's actually 6 different steps that we're going to go through. Some of them I'm just going to kind of skim through just because we definitely want to get Q&A answered at the end. So I'll be watching my time, and Heather will help me with that because there's times that I can talk a bit. So we're going to get through this. So you guys, please remember, again, please write down your Q&As. So step number 1 is having that conversation with your family. So we're going to talk about, senior care options, which I don't have to talk much about because a lot of us are through Kirby. So you guys know what that is. Kirby specializes in this. So I won't talk too much about that. Do not resuscitate, organ donation, final disposition wishes, where to find important documents, and what to do with your stuff. So that's step 1 that I'll be talking about. Step 2 is getting a will and 2 living wills. Just to put out there, guys, I'm not a lawyer, but at the same time, I do have quite a few different lawyers that I do refer people to. And I know that Kirby also has their lawyers as well. They're a great resource for those of us who need those legal documents. So I'm going to talk a little bit on that. A little bit on insurance. What does that kind of look like? Researching and choosing a funeral home and or cemetery. So this is where we'll talk about more like your prepaid options. And last but not least, we're going to be going on living life to the fullest and what that looks like. All right. And then between there, we're going to do a little game just to kind of lighten this up a little bit. All good? Awesome. All right. So first off, the first thing we have here is going to be having that important conversation with our loved ones. So if you guys can see the picture at the top, and it says, as I'm moving this screen here, it says, I have 2 last wishes. Number 1, I want my remains to be scattered around Disney World. But number 2, it says, I don't want to be cremated. I don't know how that's possible. But you know what's interesting? Because there's times that we would tell one family member one thing, we'll tell another family member something else, and there's no way it can go both ways, right? So the importance of us having these conversations is so important. So when we even look at when it comes to what our final disposition wishes are, I'm going to start with that first. When it comes to our final disposition, so when we pass away, there's a few different options, and one is cremation and one is burial. Okay. Now we can tell our family that we want to be cremated for those who want that wish, but just know that there's actually 3 different options for that. Okay. There is going to be direct cremation, which more talks about, in this case, it more talks that the first one is direct cremation, meaning that a loved one passes away, they go into the care of the funeral home, right? And what's going to end up happening is that they would then the funeral home would then cremate, and then your loved one would come and pick up the urn or the ashes or those remains, and that's the first one. Okay, the second one is a cremation, and there'll be like a memorial, a celebration of life. there'd be something. And I always tell people that, you know, doing something like a celebration, because when it comes to end of life, it's a celebration, right? So, and it's more for those who are living, not for those who've passed away, right? So it's one way that our loved ones can honor us, they can celebrate us, and they could just remember, and they're with loved ones that they can laugh, they can cry. And it's part of that healing journey, right? And that's why we do these celebrations of life. So there is a one where there's a where there's, say, an urn, whether it's at the funeral home, at a church, at a community center, at a hotel, in someone's house, whatever case may be. And that would be the second one, okay, for cremation. And the last but not least is where it's actually viewing, rental of a casket, and after the service, instead of going to the cemetery, you'll be then going to they will then cremate after. So that's what I did on Monday when I was telling you guys that story on how I was scared with it. Yeah, that's what it was. So it was a drive away. So I was actually going to our location to actually take care of the body there. So that is what your options are when it comes to cremation. Okay. And then last but not least, there is traditional funeral, where there's going to be the traditional funeral, where there's going to be, you know, a viewing. And then after the service, the celebration of life will then go to the cemetery, and then that'll be the final resting place. So keeping in mind as well that for those who do want to be cremated, the importance of us having those conversations with our loved ones in regards to what to do with our remains. There's a lot of times that we say that we want to be cremated, but none of our family wants those remains, right? So it's to have those conversations with our loved ones when it comes, right? So having these conversation with our loved ones. Another important one is, you know what, having the conversation with our loved one where, you know, letting them know and letting them be at peace. And I should have started with this one on, you know, if anything happens to me, you guys, I have everything sorted out. It's underneath the bed, in the suitcase. You know, people also put their important documents in the freezer. They say that the freezer is the safest place to put things because it doesn't burn in a fire. That's what they say. So people put their important documents in the plastic bag in the freezer, right? And then, of course, I'm going to hear people say, well, what about the vault? Or, you know, that they may keep in their house. There's pros and cons to that, but just keep in mind that there's times that we need to remember to give that key to somebody, right? Or if it's at the bank, let's say, a loved one could say pass away, say it's a Friday and it's a long weekend, the banks aren't going to be open until the Tuesday, right? So this is why we need to have these conversations in advance so that our loved ones don't go to the funeral home, make decisions, and then, you know, have the process going. And then the next thing they realize that, oh my goodness, mom didn't want to be cremated, or mom didn't want to be buried. She wanted whichever. So, you know, just having these open dialogue and these conversations is so important. For those, when it comes to organ donation, this is an interesting one just because a lot of us want to donate our organs, which is great, but just keep in mind that it's not always guaranteed whether or not they are able to take certain loved ones at that time. It could be that we are older or we have certain sicknesses and they cannot, you cannot donate your organs. So what I'm saying here is that, especially if we pass away outside of the hospital, right? So in most cases, what happens is that if we die in the hospital, because organs need a supply of oxygen, rich blood, so it needs to be in that to be able to get ready for suitable transplantation, right? So keeping in mind, you guys, that for those who want to donate your organs is not always guaranteed. So just make sure there's a backup plan for your loved ones, because if we don't have these conversations that that's not guaranteed, the family feels horrible if that doesn't happen, because they're going to feel like your final wish was not granted. Okay, so just keep it in mind when it comes to organ donation. We're not going to do senior care options just because I definitely want to get through all of this so that we have time for questions. The last one that I'm going to talk about here is DNR, do not resuscitate. This is a big one, and it's pretty much a binding legal document. And it's signed more so by a physician. The patients request as to if they were to stop breathing or if they are going to be brain dead or whatever case may be, they do not want to be resuscitated. Now, this is a difficult one if we don't have these conversations, and it causes a lot of family breakdown in a situation like this, right? So, having this document set up and having these conversations with our loved one. Of course, this is also where the enduring power of attorney personal directive comes in also, which I'll talk about after. So having that conversation is just really, really important. I remember in our home, we had this conversation, and I remember a close family friend was passing away, and she decided that she did not want to be like resuscitated. She did not want nothing done. She just wanted to just go, right? And I know my dad didn't feel comfortable about, with that. And I told him that's what I want as well. And he's like, who are you to? And after he understood that, right? But at the end of the day, when it's crisis mode and the emotions are all over the place, guys, it's so much easier when we have the conversation and obviously have it written down legally. Okay. And last but not least, what to do with your stuff. We have our homes full of so many stuff. And, we have children who we think might want them. In actual case, in lots of cases, they do not, right? So, whether or not in the back of the book, there's so much stuff in the book, and we'll talk about that after. There is areas where you can write down what you want done with certain stuff of yours. And just to, there are estate sales companies that actually come into the home. They will actually go through everything, and they'll actually sell stuff on, say, the family's behalf, and they actually get paid through those proceeds. So there's no out-of-pocket expenses. This is amazing for, say, for example, you're here in Alberta, most of your kids are, say, in a different province, in a different country, and they come to, take care of stuff. In lots of cases, you guys, they're throwing things away, right? Because they just think everything is garbage. They don't have the time mentally, emotionally, they are drained because of what's happened, right? And they're grieving. And now they have all this stuff that they don't know what to do with it, right? So what we can do is start listing what we want. I know people who are starting to give out stuff to friends and families way in advance just because they don't know when their last days are, right? But also just to keep in mind that there are estate sales companies that actually help your loved ones through that. And one of the advertisers in the back of my book, there's a company at the back that I'm forgetting the name at the moment that actually helps with that. So just kind of keep that in mind, all right? All right, so let's go to step number 2, getting a will and 2 living wills. So I don't want to put nobody in the spot here. I typically ask, show of hands of those who have a will. And, let's also keep in mind for those who have children. We've seen different situations where a loved one has passed away. There is no will in place. There's no legal documents in place. And let's just keep in mind that a will is pretty much our verbal wishes, right? And it's to guide our families, where you're going to be assigning an executor that will be making decisions when you're no longer around. In fact, now that I think about it, when a loved one passes away and the family goes to the funeral home, one of the first questions that the funeral director is going to ask is there a will? And the reason why they're asking this question is because they want to know who's going to be responsible for making the decisions. And that's who they're going to pretty much be listening to. Not to mention that they're the ones that's going to be more reliable or responsible for paying that funeral home bill. We'll talk about after as to ways that you can take away that financial burden off of your executor. But, that is an important question that comes up, hence why it's so important once you're over the age of, there is actually a religion called the Baha'i faith. And by the age of 16, they are already educating the young people on the importance of having a will. Okay, so, as long as, especially if you have children, I'm going to tap a little bit on those who are married, especially if you have a blended family, the importance to ensure to have a will and ensuring that it is done correctly with a lawyer so that it's properly will be, it'll be properly assigned as to what happens, because we've seen situations where there is a couple who have 2 different sets of children. The first couple, say, the first spouse passes away, right? And then let's say it's a house, okay? everything's going to roll to the second spouse. So what ends up happening is that when the second spouse passes away, then the proceeds is going to go down to their children, which means that the first spouse who passed will not get anything from the proceeds, say, of the sale of the home, right? So this is why it's so important that we have wills, whether you have children, you don't, whether you are a split family, mixed family, the importance of having a will is just so important. There's also the two living wills, and those are we don't really call them living wills here in Alberta, but they are documents that if we were to lose mental capacity, we are delegating someone to make decisions on our behalf. We're seeing more and more seniors with Alzheimer's and dementia. And it's not even just about the seniors. Say, for instance, it's a young person who was on their way home from work. They got into an accident, a brain injury, right? So it's just to appoint someone to make decisions when you're not able to do that. So once again, these are all documents that we all need. For those who have aging parents, aging children, the importance of talking to them about these documents, because it's one thing if something happens, but it's almost like if we don't have these conversations, whatever affects one affects us all, right? So once things are kind of spinning out of control, it affects especially the parents, right? So this is why it's important to have these conversations on having these three legal documents in place. The enduring power of attorney is pretty much going to help with the finance part of stuff, and the personal directive. And this is here in Alberta because every province has different names, okay? Here is enduring power of attorney personal directive. One takes care of the finances, one takes care of medical and living accommodations, things like that, okay? So, the importance of having this done, and a perfect example of this is, say, for instance, you have two children, okay? And you know that there's one child that's not good with money whatsoever, right? And, that can be that child that's going to have to step up to take care of your finances. So this is why it's important to have these conversations and to sign someone in advance. And in fact, when it comes to the lawyers, you could actually get these three documents in a package. And that will take away a lot of the stress, a lot of the time that happens if there's a crisis. And it just helps with that clarity. Okay, so once again, if you don't have these legal documents, reach out to the Kirby Center, Unison, on who their resources are, and get these documents set up. All right. Let's go over to insurance. Step 3 is insurance. I know in lots of cases we don't like to talk about insurance, but we have car insurance, we have home insurance. An interesting thing enough, you guys, is that, for example, if we get into an accident, who is the first person that we call? The insurance company, right? So we protect our homes, we protect our vehicles, and the question is, are we protecting ourselves, right? So when it comes to insurance, I know just based on what is happening in our household right now, I see the importance of people having a critical illness. In fact, they're all important. And I'm not here to talk about this too, because this is very extensive. For those who want more information, you can reach out to me, or, talk to someone who does insurance. The importance of having a critical illness insurance policy. I don't know if we've realized where we are getting in regards to the stats for cancer. And I think about a couple who, for instance, one ends up with cancer. The second one is busy working, but in lots of cases, they're going to have to help their other spouse, right? So that could be two different incomes that could be either missing depending on where they're working. So, the importance of having a critical illness insurance policy, that's going to help with that. I know that the stats before for cancer was 2 in every 5. I've heard what the new stats are. I'm not going to talk about it yet till I could fully confirm it. And they're getting high, right? And it doesn't mean that we're going to die from cancer. No. And that's one of the things that I do want to start to normalize, is that in some cases, cancer can be a chronic illness, right? Just like, high blood pressure, diabetes. But at the end of the day, having income coming into the home to help with the expenses, so that the loved one can help the other loved one makes a huge difference when it comes to that, right? So obviously you have critical illness insurance, there's disability insurance, there's term insurance, there's whole life insurance. Seeing that there's quite a few seniors on this call, the importance of understanding the difference of term insurance and whole insurance is really huge, because in lots of cases we get term insurance, which is perfect, right? I call term insurance paycheck protection. Paycheck protection, that if I was to pass away at a younger age, before I retire, let's say, the insurance is going to help pay for the finances for the family, right? And interesting story is that with the ex, I call him the ex, I was married previously. I remember I ensured that I paid his premiums for his insurance policy up until we were divorced. I won't even talk how long that took, and it was long. Um, but the reason why I did this, you guys, is because he had two children. And if anything happened to him, what would happen to the children? Right. So, and of course, if anything happened to him, because I'm ex, who's going to get the calls? Who's going to, you know what I mean? So I made sure that I took care of that. And let me tell you, as soon as that divorce went through, I, contacted the insurance company. You need to contact him and. Took a while, but we got that done. But I'm just saying the importance of us when it comes to insurance, because in lots of cases when a loved one passes away, and they go to the funeral home, that's when they get the shock as to what that bill can possibly look like. Yes, there's different options when it comes to the funeral home bill, and I'll go into that a little bit after. But the importance of having these protections in. So a lot of us, especially for seniors, we had a term insurance policy. We no longer have it, because we've outlived it, right? But the purpose that it was there, so if something was to happen, it's there to protect our loved ones, right? So you have the term policies, and then keeping in mind that when we've been working all these years, right, and then we are now retired, we don't have those work benefits either. So then, the importance of having, say, a whole life policy, which is there to pay out on that. So, right. So let's just kind of keep that in mind, the importance of insurance products. Okay. All right. Let's move on to this slide right here. What really defines an unexpected death? When we look at the list here, in lots of cases, we're going to realize that quite a few people we're going to notice have passed unexpectedly, right? And this is why it's so important that we have these conversations and we get all of our, legal documents in place, and we get all of our insurances in place and have these conversations, because we just don't know when something's going to happen, right? So the top 5 risk factors of death is heart attack or heart disease, cancer, accidents, stroke, things like that. And keeping in mind again, because even when it comes to cancer, and I'm going to emphasize on this again, when a loved one at times are diagnosed with, say, cancer, there's times that they literally shut down and they don't want to talk about anything when it comes to possibly dying, right? So it is kind of one of those unexpected, although they've had it for however long, they don't want to talk about it. I know people who've lost loved ones and they didn't tell them that they had the cancer, and they found out when it was too late or when they've passed, right? So this is why it's so important that we have these conversations, normalize what our final wishes are, normalize if something happens, get things in place. And just remember, it's not just about us, but it's for the family around, because if it affects one, it affects all, right? And it could be generation, right? So, just the importance of having these protections in place, and just realize that death is not planned in lots of cases. It kind of just happens. We talked to someone yesterday, and next thing you know, we get the call, or we see something on Facebook, whatever case may be, and they're no longer around. And I'm not too sure about you guys, but I'm seeing more and more notices on Facebook, right? On so-and-so has passed, and the list kind of goes on, right? So, just for us to realize that, when it comes to this topic that we don't like to talk about, it's a part of life, just like how we are born, how we live, and then there's the next phase, which is aging, and then obviously when we pass, right? But some will go before others. So let's just kind of keep that in mind, the importance of having these conversations and making sure that our family is protected through this all. All right. Okay, so let's do a game. Are you guys ready? So I am going to get my stop clock on here. Okay, so the next slide has numbers 1 to 54. Okay, and I'm going to give you guys 1 minute to find numbers 1 to 54. So you're just going to, find number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And let's see how far you get in the minute. See how many numbers you can find from numbers 1 to 54. All right. So you have 1 minute. Do you guys get what the instructions are? You can just put a yes. Tell me you guys are ready. Let's see the yeses. I'm not seeing anything yet. Are you guys ready? So the next slide, as I mentioned, is going to have numbers 1 to 54 all mixed up. Okay, guys, let's see how far you can get to find numbers 1 to 54 in its order in 1 minute. Okay, all right. So, all right, starting now. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. So how many of us found numbers up to number 54? I can't even say show of hands. So in the chat, tell me how many of us got to, oh, okay, I'm seeing the numbers. Come, let's put the numbers in. I won't even go down. Let's just see what the numbers look like. I see a 36. That's awesome. So I can see that the numbers are literally all over. Look at that. So let me ask you guys, how did that make you feel looking for numbers 1 to 54? Just type it in there. How did that make you feel? Frustrated, slow, yep, stressed, like I need new glasses, panicked and slow, anxious when I got stuck. Yes. Anything else? Anybody else? Panic, anxious. Yep. Stressful, panicked. You guys are amazing. Thank you so much for being honest with me. Okay. So we are going to do this again. Okay. But I'm going to show you how to do this the next time around. All right. So there's a method to this. Now I just have to move these screens so that I can show you guys the numbers. Okay, so I hope you guys can see my mouse. Can you guys see that? I need to tell me if you see my mouse moving around here. Just need to see a yes. Do you guys see my mouse moving around so I could show you how to do this? Yes, okay, awesome. Okay, all right. Okay. See, there's number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5, number 6, number 7, number 8, number 9, back up to 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Do you guys get it? You guys got me now, right? Okay. So we're going to go back and we're going to try this again. Okay. So let me just get my timer going and let's see how we do the second time around. Hold on. Are you guys ready? On your marks, get set, go. How far can you get to find numbers 1 to 54? Ten, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, guys, how do we do the second time around? Put your numbers in, put your numbers in. I see 1 got to 54. Aha. Okay. Look at the numbers. So the question is, guys, the second time around, how did that make you feel? Finding numbers 1 to 54. Prepared. Yes. Anyone else? Confident, prepared, and accomplished. Yes. Like I had a plan to follow. Calmer. Ready. Still challenged, but confident. Yes. Less stressed. And at the end of the day, as we can see, there was a difference, right? You felt better, your numbers were higher, you knew what to do, right? And this is the thing that happens is that when we look at the first one, right? In most cases, if a loved one passes away, and this is what happens when there's no conversation of final wishes. There's no insurance or final finances in place to help pay for that funeral home bill, the cemetery bill, end of life expenses. There's no will. There's no funeral home cemetery arrangements that's been set up. And pretty much it's a memorial of a tragedy, right? That'd be the first one. Then you have the second one where you were able to get directions. It takes away that confusion. It takes away that chaos. Finances are taken care of. There's less or no family disputes. It takes away the immense stress that our family goes through. And instead, it's more therapeutic and it's more of a positive legacy. Oh my goodness, you guys. My mom went to the funeral home and she did everything. We didn't have to do anything, right? My mom told me what she wanted. So we didn't fight at the funeral home. We weren't arguing as what it is because we've had these conversations and things were in place, right? So that's the difference of when there's a plan in place. Doesn't matter what age we are, as opposed to when there isn't. You guys get that? Time is running away here. Okay, so moving on to step 4, researching and I'm going to go through this so quickly, guys. Research and choosing a funeral home and or cemetery. You know what? This is where you are able to actually do prepaid funeral packages, right? And so a lot of people don't really understand that when a loved one passes away, especially if there's going to be a cemetery involved, whether it's going to be with the casket or with the urn, there's 2 different bills. There's a funeral home bill. There is the cemetery bill, right? And so the funeral home bill is pretty much when your loved one passes away up until the final resting place. And then the next bill is going to be the final resting place, which is going to be the cemetery. Okay. So when a loved one dies, let's say example in a hospital, one of the first questions that the doctor or the nurse is going to ask is, who do you want us to contact to come received your loved one? And this is a shock for some because imagine your loved one could be in the hospital for however long. And now all of a sudden, the hospital is not for them. So now it's to think, what do we do next? Right. So you can prepay in advance the funeral home bill and the cemetery bill. They have different payment plans. And when you do this, it locks in today's dollars for one. It's the decisions are made well in advance, and it takes away that financial burden from your loved one, from your executor, and most of all, it takes away the burdens from your loved ones on a whole. And it ensures that your wishes are what's going to be going through, right? So this is the importance of having this done in advance. Um, I won't even go into too much details there, but once again, if you guys have any questions, feel free to reach out to me because time is running and I definitely want to be answering questions. So this is for this, as I mentioned, guys, they tailor make this so it fits into your budget. I've had family members who we worked with their aging parents or aging children, sorry, just to be able to help with this so that it's done in advance as opposed to crisis mode when something happens. And let's be real, when it's crisis mode, we are now buying on emotions. And for some odd reason, the greater grief we have, the deeper we go into our pockets, right? So this is why having this stuff done in advance works out really well. Last but not least, you guys, we're going to talk about living life to the fullest. They say that the graveyard is the richest place on earth simply because that is where you see a lot of the numerous unfilled hopes and dreams. That is where they are. And, when we have anybody here have a bucket list? Um, Anybody? Bucket list. They say that a bucket list is for us to where we do stuff before we kick the bucket, right? For those of us who have bucket lists, just know that, creating memories today is what's going to help our loved ones when we're no longer around. Might it be we have celebrations, we're taking pictures. Might it be that, we are recording our voices. We're going to record different messages for our loved ones. We could write them letters, things like that. But most of all, when it comes to living life to the fullest, is create what your bucket list looks like and start having a deadline and just work on them. Whether it's monthly, whether it's yearly, work on those bucket lists because we just know nowadays when we look at it that tomorrow is not guaranteed. So when it comes to our legacies, legacy is about life and living. It's about learning from the past, living in the present, and building for the future. Legacy is the ultimate person we become. So the question here is, what do we want our legacy to be, and how do we want to be remembered? And you just kind of work backwards, right? And that's how we could be leaving a lasting legacy. Might it be on the finance side? Might it be character, how we treat people? Some of us have like these family traditions, you know what I mean? Just keeping that alive so that it follows years and years to come. It might be volunteering, doing good deeds. The list kind of goes on as to what your legacy looks like overall. Um, yeah, you guys, sorry, I was fast forwarding this because we have 12 more minutes. Um, I'll have, thank you. There you are.
We can take a couple extra minutes, I think. We
Yeah,
did
you
start
think
a few
so? Okay.
minutes late. Yep.
All right. So, when it comes to, what, we're just going to kind of wrap it up in regards to the book, you guys. So, this is the book that I wrote. And I know that we're going to talk just a little bit on this, Heather, in regards to what this book looks like, you guys. You can order it on Amazon. And if you guys, I do copies as well. They're $25 that we sell it for. And then on Amazon is $29.95. Reach out to Heather. We could figure out something as to what that kind of looks like. And when it comes to the book, Heather, is there any parts in there that really
Yes.
rang a bell for you when you went in
Yes.
there?
Yes. I'm not gonna lie to everybody here. I just enjoy organization. And when I took a look at this book, okay, I'm not big on sales pitching in these presentations because that's not what they're about. They're about the information and how to start your learning journey. Having said that, the inside of this thing at the back, it reminded me of how to get set up for a wedding. It has everything listed in
Yes,
here.
yes.
It's what do you want? Where's the information? Who do you deal with? It's the back of the book for me, the workbook that you put in there. Um, holy jumping.
Yeah,
Made me
and
so
with
happy.
right And you guys, it's in big font as well. And what happens is as you read through the chapters, it links you to the workbook at the back. And I mean, at the back, it has what to say and what not to say to people who are grieving. You know, there's so many times we're saying the wrong things, right? What to say to someone who is passing away, what to do the first 24 hours when a loved one passes away. And there's so much other good information in there. We won't spend too much more time on that because we want to get to questions and answer. So yes, that is the information on the book. So Heather, did you get any
I think everybody
questions?
was kind of overwhelmed at the moment. I encourage everyone to start putting your questions into the chat box there. Um, there was one in there that it's the causes of sudden death, and it had self-harm in there. Um, is that covered? Is that have we changed that at all, or is insurance still no,
So what
you
happens that there's a clause. So, you know, if one commits suicide, it can't be within the first 2 years. So there is a clause on that. You can't decide that you want to commit suicide. You have, you know, how many bills that you have to pay. You decide, I'm going to help my family by, you know, getting an insurance policy right away. And then, you know, yeah. So there's a 2 year clause on that.
oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But at the end of the day, what that was, it wasn't so much that slide was more on sudden passes, right? You know, so
Mhm.
for those who have to deal with it, because when a loved one passes away, it's now everyone's problem, right? And from the children to the grandchildren, it affects us all. So this is just that slide was just more to show us that in most cases, when there is a loved one that passes away, it's unexpected, right? So yeah.
Okay. And you talked about insurance. What's the best way to go about trying to find somebody to explain everything to you? Like, because there's so
Definitely.
many options. Where do you start with that?
That is such a good question. Now, when I wrote the book, there I didn't want it just to be for Alberta. I want it to be more universal. So as you read through the book, you're going to see that it says talk to a professional in your area because everywhere is different. And what I advise when it comes to those who have insurance products, don't just meet with one, meet with, you know, 2 to 3 different insurance specialists and get their advice and then kind of go that way. Don't just go with the one. There's a lot of different options out there. Oh my goodness, there's a lot of different options out there, right? So you definitely just want to do your research in advance and read the dotted lines. Some of us are reading or are, you know, enrolling in some of these insurance products, not really understanding. I'm going to show, there's one particular um, accident and sickness coverage accident policy, let's say that if one was to pass away, a lot of us have the accident coverage, whether it's through our bank, whether it's through insurance, but that only covers when the person has died from an accident. So if one dies
Oh,
from, you know, whether it's heart attack, stroke, or like, you know, things like that, it's not going to cover. So there's times that the family gets the shock of their life when, you know what I mean? It's just, there's no coverage for that. Well, you know, mom has been paying insurance for however long. Well, now mom is retired. Her insurance premium shot up and she can't afford it. So she ends up lapsing it. Do you know what I mean? Which is why another reason why having these conversations with our loved ones. Okay, Andrea, if you die tomorrow, can you pay for your own funeral? Right? Because we need to have these conversations. Otherwise, it falls on the plate on those who are left behind.
okay. We got a couple of questions. What happens in the case of drafting the will and an accident happens and you die? Do you know if
It's void.
it's void? Okay. Do you happen to know if somebody's over 70, can you still get insurance?
If you sure can, it depends on the type of insurance. There's different ones. Um, like the prepaid funeral packages, those more also help those who, because there's a way, like for instance, at the funeral homes, you can go and choose all what you want. You can do different packages, and they have different coverages that people either pay everything up front, they'll pay half, and then do payment plans. There's different options. So there are different options for insurance depending on your age. It just depends what they are. And as I said, that's another probably conversation. If anybody wants to reach out to me, I could help you with that. But
Yeah,
there
good
are
place to
different insurances,
start.
but in most cases, there's not really. But and keeping in mind, you guys, now we are older, we are higher risk, so your premiums will be higher.
Up. Now,
Okay.
you and I, before we started this presentation, were having a quick chat about if, one person, the wife or the spouse needs to go into care, and the other one does not. And what does that look like? And there are some things, legally speaking, that people should be aware of. Can you kind of run us through maybe a couple of things?
So when you're saying, so do you mean like a long-term care facility when you're saying in care, or is this when
Yeah.
they lose
So
mental capacity, or what do you,
no, we were talking about, if, say somebody has, they need medical assistance. So they're in an assisted care facility where the
okay.
other partner is not, and they're still in the home. So how does that, like, are there other things, or what kind of things should people be aware of when it comes to, responsibilities or who's entitled to what when you're not able to live together?
When you're not able to live together? Yeah, that is such a good question because now, in most cases, when that happens, it's in crisis mode and there needs to be plans in advance that we start thinking about that in case that was to happen, what do we do next, right? So it might be that one is in a care facility and there's times that your spouse can move in also. So now you're going to get rid of the house or you're going to move in together, right?
Hmm.
Um, and just keeping in mind that obviously when it comes to these long-term care facilities, the costs, you guys, are one extreme to the next, right?
Yeah.
It can be a pretty penny, especially if it's not public. So, it's things like this that we need to have these conversations in advance. There's times that if we plan in advance, our aging parents can stay home as long as possible because we have set up the home in a way that they can, as opposed to there's a crisis mode and they can't go back home because it takes too long to set things up, whatever the case may be. And now they are forced to not be able to go back home, right? So
Hmm.
possibly as our aging parents are getting older, start having these conversations as to what is the plan if this was to happen. Are we moving in with the kids? Are we going to move in? You know what I mean? That kind of thing. It's just having these conversations, reaching out to the Kirby Center. Oh, there's a few other organizations that I do partner with that will help you guys with what that kind of looks like. And that's the thing, even as adult children, we are so busy with our own family, with our lives, with working. And then now when we have our aging parents that are now, their health is, that's where we more need to kind of step up. But it's like we don't have these conversations, right? So the more that you know in advance, with adult children, have these conversations with them, you know what I mean? So that you guys know what your options are before something happens.
So as a couple, who would they go to start looking? Is it a lawyer?
No, like for instance, I want to say that at Kirby, you guys have those type of resources, but there's another
Yeah.
organization, and I'm forgetting the name of it, that I work very well with. Her name is Kathy. I'm going to tell you the name. And
That's okay.
they
If you
actually
send it to me, I'll send it out to everybody.
Okay, perfect. I will find it. But yeah, there's different organizations that is able to help with help these seniors on starting to have a plan as to when as you're getting older, as to what your options are.
Okay. And do you have any advice, I guess, to the couples out there, the
Pro
spouses? What's that?
Proactive seniors is
Proactive
another,
seniors.
yeah, and I'm
All
I'm sure
right.
that they've partnered with you guys as well. They are amazing. They are amazing.
Perfect.
Yeah.
So advice on how to start the conversation with your loved one, maybe your partner, your spouse, whatever, when they don't want to talk about it. Any
Yeah.
suggestions on how to broach the subject?
It's going to be one of those things. And I usually have the adult children who wants to talk to their aging parents about it. And in the flip side, then I'll go the other way. It's, we want to be prepared to say to them, do you know what, mom or dad, if something happens to me, um, I have this and this done. So we almost want to lead so that they're going to want to make sure that they have stuff done as well. Cause it's like, oh, wait 1 second, I have nothing done. You're younger. How come you're ready? Right. That kind of thing. But for those of us who have children, just let them know. I know you don't want to talk about this, but you know what? Just to bring me peace, I just want you guys to know that I have this, I have that, and just let them know if anything happens. I want to make sure that you guys are going to be okay, right? And inside the book, there is a letter for that as well. Um, on what to do as well if and when something happens. So yeah, it's just to have these conversations early as much as we don't want to. Or you can watch a movie that has a funeral scene in there that is funny, and then that's where you have the conversations. Or if you go to, say, a funeral or a memorial service and have the conversation, oh my goodness, they did this. Well, when I pass, I want this is this. You know what I mean? So just find ways, you guys, I laugh about everything. Seriously, I'm bad. My mother's about to get rid of me one day because she's like, you laugh for everything. But at the end of the day, it's just to find the humor, just find time to have these conversations. Because you guys, I'm going to be honest, if it's too late, it's too late. And I promise you, you're going to want to have the conversations before it's crisis mode. It is a different conversation. It's a different experience. And I'm at the point that I'm realizing that when we don't have these conversations, it's also affecting our family's grieving experience when we're no longer here.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. We had one person ask for the name of the place again. We used Proactive?
Proactive Seniors. Proactive Seniors.
Proactive Seniors. All right.
Mm-hmm.
Just an FYI, I will make sure that everything is in the email that I send out to the registrants, and then I will put it into the description on the YouTube channel as well. Let's see. Planning is important. Care facilities. Oh, okay. So somebody's saying that care facilities can help you answer these questions, and the AHS seniors can also help with some of those questions.
Perfect.
It's just good to know that they're questions that need to be asked.
Yes, yes.
That is perfect. All right. Do we have anybody else that has any questions that they want to ask?
I see one there. Why would you need two living wills? So the living wills are the enduring power of attorney personal directive. So those are the two documents that kick in when we lose mental capacity. So each of those, one handles the finances and one handles more health situations and your living accommodations.
Is
So
that part
they
of the
do
green
cover two
sleeve?
different parts. Sorry?
Is that part of the green sleeve?
You know, I have not really looked into the green sleeve, and I know that as an option. I know that with the green sleeve, it also talks about, if you were to um go into distress, whether or not you want to be, like resuscitated or not. I know that's part of the green sleeve, but I'm not too sure about the enduring power of attorney personal
It's
directive.
okay. Somebody
But
just
that's
said
not the
no.
legal part. That's the thing. The enduring power of attorney personal directive is more legal. Like that's
Yeah.
what your family would be using in court, kind of a thing, right?
And
So
thank you to the person that just said, no, the green sleeve is not part of that.
thank you. Yeah, I haven't really
Which
looked
is
into it.